Test Drive, a racing franchise that has stood the test of time for decades, despite constantly being tossed around between developers and publishers like a hot potato. The first title, released in the year of 1984, was the franchise's first foray into the industry. Created as one of the earliest attempts to simulate realistic car handling with realistic pixel illustrations of the cars, despite the limitations of technology at the time. It was an innovative title, paving the way for racing games to contract and utilize multiple car brands into the digital medium and push for more realism-based racing games. After constantly getting passed around from developer to developer, each with their own visuals of what an ideal racing game should be, the series started to lose its original identity, piling up a ton of spin-off titles that goes way too far into the arcadey bits, and...
Brother, what's that? What's that, brother?
But then Eden Games came into the picture with their first title. This title may not be what you're thinking of, but this was one of the few steps that would open up Eden Games into finally getting full reign of the Test Drive series, with the development of Test Drive Unlimited. Test Drive Unlimited was a perfect mirror to the original title. It was innovative and arguably revolutionary. The first attempt by anyone to create a racing game MMO, with a near-accurate recreation of the map, taking place on the Hawaiian island of Oahu. This game is arguably where the original ideas of current-day open-world racing games came from. You can trace ideas used in modern titles like the Forza Horizon series. A massive map, a ton of cars, housing, social spaces, and a ton of racing, with non-racing content and major incentives to explore the map. The first title was such a phenomenal experience, one that brought rights to a new subgenre, adding so much needed nuance to these games. TDU was so successful that it had to get a follow-up, and in 2011, Eden Games returned to expand more on the series, adding more cars, with Oahu returning, doubling the map next to the addition of Ibiza, the addition of a single-player linear campaign, a bit more in-depth MMO features with race lobbies and housing, overhauled car class system, and the best bits of content for the games, the casino, and the one thing that everybody remembers, the car wash. However, TDU 2 would be a controversial title. Many consider it an improvement over its predecessor, while others see it as a downgrade or a step in the wrong direction, mostly due to its questionable handling change, doubling down on the MMO aspect, but also clashed by its somewhat long linear single-player progression. Despite the fact, there was one reason why both TDU 1 and 2 remained popular far after its server shut down. Both of them were still playable offline, with the caveat of having certain content locked behind the online servers. This gave both titles an edge, as players can still progress through the game if the servers decided to go nuclear. Unfortunately, sometime after TDU 2's release, Atari would fall into bankruptcy, eventually having to auction and sell the franchise they had bought out, Test Drive being among them. And in 2016, the franchise would finally be purchased by Big Ben Interactives, the company that would later become what we know today as Nacon. 2 years after the purchase of Test Drive, Nacon would also acquire Kiloton, a developer with experience in the racing genre, mainly rally titles with the WRC series. But this purchase is more than just a coincidence. It had been something planned by Nacon to resurrect the Test Drive Unlimited IP from its dormant state. And in 2020, we got our first confirmation of TDU's imminent return. A year later, a trailer would drop, confirming the game's setting to be the area of Hong Kong, taking us to a completely different setting once again, with Alan Jarnieu in the seat of creative director, who had worked on both previous TDU releases. The next couple of years would be a pretty quiet one for the title. Several development news posted every couple of months or so, just to keep reminding people that it's still happening. Delays from 2022 to 2023 due to the cancellation of the 8th generation console support, followed by another one to 2024. Then finally, a release date.
Oh my god! Okay, it's happening!
But the years of delays has given the fans a reason to be concerned, so a bunch of demo periods were made available, initially being a limited invite only, with predominantly big content creators getting priority. The footage that would circulate ended up causing more concerns, as a lot of the players are constantly crashing, putting the game's handling and physics into question. However, there were parts of the community still clinging to the hope that this might truly be a great resurrection for TDU, and fortunately for them, months later they would drop a surprise open beta for PC. I was able to participate in this specific session, taking place back in June and lasting for around 10 days. At the time, impressions were mixed at best. Main criticism that got pointed out was the obvious lack of performance optimization, forcing players to drop their graphics settings, which ends up contributing to the game's graphics looking pretty bad, especially the character models. Some interface designs like the race results screen further amplify the criticism, with many pointing out how it looks like it's coming from a mobile game. But then there's the racing, which was better received. Some like it, but others certainly had have issues with it. The sense of speed can feel good, but because you're often racing in the narrow roads, you're often in low speed with some exceptions. The fact that Frim is limited to only 10 claims throughout the demo did not fill people with confidence, as players became paranoid over the chance of them limiting Frim daily or weekly on their full release. But otherwise, the map of Hong Kong, or rather the chunk that we got, was surprisingly interesting, and it showcased that TDU's old map design and some of its strengths such as the individual dealerships are here to stay. So then, with only 3 months left to address the feedback, how will the full release of Solar Crown fare to its predecessor and the demo period? Will this carry on the legacy or will it sink? Well, let this be a lesson to never pre-order any modern game ever. What you're about to see is the state of the game on the early release for Gold Edition owners. The game starts from this overly futuristic mission control room, where a random character will be chosen to join the Solar Crown community. It's certainly way over the top compared to the more grounded setup of TDU 1 and 2, turning the Solar Crown into this weird super elite network with high-tech gadgets you'd normally see in sci-fi or superhero media. In fact, this lady Vivian seems to dress like one herself, as she provides the tutorial test drive on a lone Lamborghini Huracan. It's set up for the players to get used to the handling, which hasn't really been changed much from the demo. High grip with mostly responsive steering. It can be a bit over the top, however, when this Range Rover, which weighs a few tons, somehow has the same snappy handling as a TTRS. Certain cars may also understeer a lot with upgrades, but the grip level will vary from one another depending on their stats and drivetrain. A short introduction to the clans, their deal, and leader. For what is essentially an elite group of racers, the Solar Crown test itself is pretty easy. This whole ordeal may remind you of the intro of TDU 2, but with far less charm attached to it, as the goal here is to get players into the gameplay loop as fast as possible. But with this done, we have the free roam tutorial, revealing that we are on a tutorial island, with the goal to start another race. This time, an actual race.
Oh my god, bro.
One eternity later.
The race finally begins. As another reminder, you cannot pause the game. The first taste of an actual race will also reflect on the rest of the game, utilizing 7 other opponents, each bringing some wide range of vehicles and performance, which can be a bit chaotic for the narrow roads of Hong Kong. Unfortunately, the end screen hasn't really changed much, so the criticism from the demo still applies here. It looks pretty strange. The character's animation doesn't really look good either. So does its model, but some may argue that's just a TDU tradition. Followed up by a second race, which doesn't really seem to serve anything different aside from another chance for players to adapt to the handling, or just to mesmerize at this beautiful Huracan on the lowest graphical settings possible, because optimization was thrown out the window.
Oh no. Oh no, not again, boys. No!
It should be mentioned, even on low settings, the game still looks pretty good, with the only notable exceptions taking place during daytime with the lack of global illumination. We got the tutorial for the hotel room and the soon-to-be-added housing system. Then at the lobby area where the cosmetics and salon is located, plus a view of how the on-foot player lobby looks like. And finally, we get to the first dealership. While there are many cars on display, our only choices here are between the Ford Mustang, Alpine, and 370Z, all 3 being within the D class. The choice of customization available here is the paint job, interior trimming, and rims. The main goal of the game seems to mainly revolve around increasing the reputation level, with each appointed level unlocking new content, mimicking TDU 1's progression system with notable alterations. There are several ways to gain levels. The simplest ones are from finishing races, discovering things such as areas, roads, landmarks, dealerships, workshops, meeting points, and finishing side missions. The basic race model consists of circuits, sprints, and time trials. The first 2 can be done against AI in an 8-driver race, but other players may join as well during the pre-race screen, while time trials are often done solo against a ghost with a set timer to beat. However, races are filled with issues at the moment, from the aforementioned server issues, inaccurate tracking, and a bizarre AI dynamic difficulty system. Even if you didn't finish first, the game will decide to upgrade the AI to the next tier, making races even harder without a proper feel to the transition. Like, you know how there are games that will ask you if you want to increase or decrease the difficulty based on whether you're winning non-stop or losing a lot? Yeah, this game does that without your consent and with less consistent timing. Otherwise, I like the challenge imposed by the AI. They are pretty competitive even in some of the lower difficulties, although sometimes the rubber band can be pretty insane. Yet they're currently buggy with the fatal flaw of going sideways at the start. But if you wanted to make the races more challenging, you can also set your assist settings, while also providing payout bonuses. Later down the line, more race types will be introduced, the first being domination. The idea itself is a race where scores are added to every checkpoint. Some Some provide double points, and whoever has the most wins, ignoring whoever crossed the finish line first. Cross-country and off-road events will also be introduced later, but besides the change in terrain and car class requirements, alongside the Solar Crown League far later, there's not much that will change. Races will also be logged by prerequisites, requiring the correct type of car class and performance range. Most will disable its traffic with some exceptions. While this comes at the benefit of having more clean races, it resulted in the world feeling empty and dead most of the time. Another option comes from challenging other players directly from the open world. This puts you in a sprint race with no performance requirements, which may be unfair, but it requires both players' consent. But the rewards from these are pretty minuscule by comparison. Every now and then you may be given optional tasks. These grant different types of rewards, which can be stickers, clothing, money, or more XP. However, Frim has been severely nerfed compared to the demo, with a slower gain and maximum limit to specific actions. And sadly, cash-ins are still limited just like the demo, with resets being daily, putting a soft cap on the amount of money that can be accumulated within a day, as the Frim was a great source for money in short bursts. Cash earned from races themselves would also be affected from several factors, where you finish, the assist difficulty, and a sizable bonus from first clears. Sadly, delivery missions are completely gone. Housing's still not available, as apparently the devs wanted to implement a bit more compared to how it was in the previous games, and stuff like the casino is coming a full year later. Without the storyline and characters in TDU 2, this does feel like a return to the original formula of TDU 1, where most NPCs exist simply to introduce the gameplay mechanics without a linear progression. Just keep on racing, earn money and XP throughout any means necessary, hoard cars, and explore the massive map. That is pretty much the loop here. The map itself is actually pretty okay. The island Hong Kong being a city with a lot of high-rise buildings, exotic wilderness, and varying town areas leaves a lot of space to play around with the concept of luxury, almost just as much as the maps of Ibiza and Oahu. The size of the map itself seems to be pretty close to the actual size of Hong Kong Island, which is a bit of a neat design choice. The higher graphic fidelity proves way more of a range of visuals and vibes with the addition of the weather, from the scorching heat to drenching rain. Previously in the demo, we were only given access to the northern side of Hong Kong, which even at the time was already pretty massive, but now with the map fully unlocked, the size of the map is put into the forefront. As an incentive to explore, the game utilizes the TDU tradition of having many dealerships for different cars and brands scattered all around the map, on top of the EXP gained from discovering all the different spots, features, and locations on the map. Other than the EXP, you can also get some free cars by collecting wrecks and collectibles scattered all around the map, and often hidden in every single nook and cranny, from the alleyways, underground parking spots, and the pedestrian areas. These collectibles will also be available in certain on-foot locations, such as the dealerships and tuning workshops. There's of course the speed traps across the map with cash rewards. Throughout your exploration, you may also run into certain features, such as the gas station, a place where you can fast travel, repair the car, and switch vehicles. But with far less avenues like the delivery missions, there's far less activities that will take you throughout areas you would normally explore later. So while I'd say Hong Kong looks okay with its own vibe, the lack of several features from previous titles made this game's map design weaker overall, as there are just less reasons to explore. The game features a total of 99 cars from 29 brands, each with their own performance stats, customization options, and handling. Before purchasing, you can also take these cars for a test drive, that way you can avoid the buyer's remorse issue. They can also go as low as 20k with certain classics and go into the absurd multi-millions in a very similar mentality to Gran Turismo 7, just without the microtransactions and roulette ticket. And the game's economy itself isn't completely bad with how many cash collectibles are scattered and how quick most events are. Just don't expect them to let you repeat the same race over and over again, but certain cars are locked from your hands, as you need to have a certain reputation level to unlock them, so at least there is a level of progression being done here, unless you got the silver or gold editions, where they can drop you fast cars as early as level 12. The car list itself is very peculiar. The first thing people will most likely notice is how it's missing a lot of brands, especially ones from Asian territories. Big names like Honda, Toyota, Mazda, Mitsubishi, and Subaru are completely absent. There's only 2 Nissans in the whole game, game, and not even a single clue for Wuling. We're in Hong Kong and somehow there's almost no Asian cars available in the game. But maybe they decided to not include those brands because most of their lineups are not exactly luxurious, but that wouldn't explain why Lexus would be missing here. Meanwhile, there's 6 variants of the 4GT, most of which being the 2016 version, 5 different variations of the Audi R8, and a bunch of brands with only one car on the roster like Mini, Maserati, Volkswagen, Citroen, and Bentley. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason for the cars that got picked to be in the game. Unfortunately, it seems like the 2006 4GT is completely unavailable for purchase on any of the dealerships, making it the deluxe edition and pre-order exclusive car. The cars themselves are further separated with the game's class system, which seems to take a bit from TDU 2. Previously, it was 4 letter-based classes to differentiate between classics, off-road, modern asphalt, and motorbikes, with the numbers to indicate its performance group. Here, the letter-based classes returned and expanded a bit more, with D for daily drivers, C for cross-country, S for supercars, G for grand tours, and H for hypercars. The performance score, on the other hand, starts to go into a bit more details by utilizing 3 digits like Forza Horizon. One part this game excels at is the ability to also modify the cars with different driving mode setups, allowing players to change the way the car handles based on the terrain and track setup. However, there are no specific brand workshop garages. Instead, every workshop has been turned into a multiplayer lobby where you can tune your rides with performance parts, change its visuals by changing paint, interiors, rims, and adding liveries, all on a specific pedestal next to your fellow gamers. With one massive catch, there is no way to look for community-made liveries. You can make your own and check the liveries you've made, but there's no way to share or use other people's creations. Upgrade parts themselves are limited by reputation level, so you can't just boost your way to the very top from the start. The car can be played around, down to almost unbelievable details. It's certainly interesting and may explain the low car count, as these details and options would have taken quite a while to set with each car, especially when we consider certain cars will have unique settings such as the convertibles. There's one aspect of detail that's missing, however, the specialized speedometer designs. Early in the prologue, a cutscene shows the character applying what seems to be an optic lens before the game's UI pops up. This works to the benefit of having the same UI in different camera options, and helps with making every bit of the game's interface design into something that's tied to the world building. But it's ultimately a convenience that comes at a cost, as every car is now attached with this generic digital speedo design, an unfortunate loss of each car's personality. Car damage, on the other hand, is quite pitiful. The most someone can get would be a bunch of scratches and dents, but nothing more than that. It is most likely done on purpose to make sure the aforementioned car features can stay functional even after doing stunts that will get your social credit scores to the negatives. Once you manage to get a car upgraded and running based on your preference, you can start taking them for races and the competitive time trial. It functions like a normal time trial with a competitive leaderboard between players. The reward is only cash, but a massive pile of them, giving so much needed funds for the super expensive cars, or if you needed a bit more for some upgrades or customizations. The game itself features a crew system. They're unlocked once reaching reputation level 12, with the choice between rich snobs and crypto bros, and the other choice being the hipsters. Whichever choice you pick, you can always switch to another crew if you want to acquire the rewards from that clan specifically. This will also unlock another progression bar with influence level. The clans also unlock head-to-head races, split into a 4v4 clan duel, with similar functions to a sprinted circuit race. Just like the regular races, this also can have allied or opponent clan members joining the race, which can turn them into a PvP influence farm or a full-blown PvP clan war. The higher you influence, the more clan NPCs you can challenge. These guys are the closest thing this game has to boss races, with their 1v1 duels. They're not exactly challenging either, but you get a lot of rewards from them, consisting of mostly cosmetics and stickers based on the chosen clan. Its earn rate is affected in a similar way to cash rewards, but with an extra caveat of bonuses for each rival clan member behind you. The system itself at the moment is kind of bare bones, since all that happens is you get to race some NPCs you never interact with, and most of the benefits we get are mostly cosmetics. But I think there's something worth discussing. Why is there a streets clan even in this game? TDU is supposed to be about luxury. Their existence feels a bit off and antithetical to the premise and idea of the rest of the game. Maybe if the game had more tuner cars or more in-depth customization, it would make sense then, giving players a more underground type car community. Since most of the clan rewards are going to be cosmetics, let's take a look at the game's character editor for a bit. It's extremely basic, and I think that's for a good reason, as it allows for the focus to be on the cars, yet it does have a bit more complexity and options than other games on the same market. The body may not be customizable, but the face is a completely different picture. You can make your character look good or turn them into equivalent to demons from hell. And then we have the clothing, which doesn't really do anything unique this time around. No hitchhikers and models means there's nothing like fashion vouchers, so everything is bought by cash or unlocked through side missions and clan influence. There's not many options at the moment, so character creation won't outshine the true stars of the game. Now let's talk about the problem that everybody has been facing. Are you fucking kidding me? Fuck! We were doing so well! And yet the fuck it up, game! Oh, there's a new error. Resource synchronization has timed out. So that's the 5th one. Since the official release date, the developers at Tekken have addressed a lot of the issues plaguing the game, as they should considering where the game is currently on Steam. With a promise of big updates and maintenance in the upcoming weeks to iron out the game's problems, especially the server side, which to their credit has gotten better since my initial streams. However, the community sentiment has been clear. This game needs an offline mode, as technical issues like these are likely to happen once again in the unknown future. If there is an example that could embolden the Stop Killing Games movement to the furthest degrees, this would be it. The game and developers have proven that this is very unreliable with its online servers. Every single facet of the game that requires any interaction towards the server has at least failed in several unique ways, from the long queue time to get into the game, race events crashing when entering and exiting races, you getting kicked during races, livery editor crashing to the start menu, save failures. It just goes on and on without stopping. And to make it worse, the game has no crossplay and limited regional servers, which is a disastrous decision considering this game is supposed to be an MMO racing game. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure they'll fix these problems in the coming weeks or most likely months, but early impressions matter and will stick with the general gaming audience even when the game gets better, especially since these are server related issues which pose the threat of returning even when the server finally gets fixed later down the line. So it should not be surprising, but I cannot recommend people to buy this game right now, not until the price drops on a discount or after they applied an offline patch. Without one, it's just inevitable that these server issues will rear its head once again and ruin the experience, which is a shame as what the game had to offer as of currently is solid enough with the post-launch content that may bring this game back to TDU 2's content at the end of its lifespan. And I admit, TDU 2 had a lot of its features locked behind the online connectivity, like with the casino, but at least the races and its story campaign are playable, so you could at least still progress a bit, and TDU 1 has most of its content available offline, hence why it's still popular now even with its multiplayer feature absent, possibly giving the edge for the community to be able to mod the game into new heights with the Platinum mod or even resurrect the once dead online servers. So for now, let's just hope the development team can take the criticism and maybe they can make the game as good as its predecessors.
Before going into the thrilling details of our upcoming content, today we want to acknowledge that some of you voiced concern about the access to the Thru games. Today, we want to express our commitment to the future of the Thru 2 and the Thru Motorfest. We are currently exploring different solutions and can confirm an offline mode to ensure long-term access to both titles. So stay tuned for more news in the next months.